You're completely wrong.
I'm not offended, but I want to hear why.
You're completely wrong.
Hard Talk. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
More trouble for Boeing as it faces a new investigation in the US, this time over the 787 Dreamliner. Plus, what do Asians think of British food?
Quite boring, actually. Not so special.
Ouch. We'll catch up with the British companies trying to spice up their offerings to the region. Hello and a warm welcome to Asia Business Report this Tuesday. I'm Steve Lai. Now, the US regulator has opened a new investigation into Boeing. It comes after the plane maker acknowledged that some employees may have failed to carry out proper quality inspections on 787 Dreamliners. From New York, the BBC's Michelle Fleury has more.
Boeing's work is once again in the spotlight. America's air safety regulator, the Federal Aviation Authority, has opened a new investigation into Boeing after the company came forward and said some employees had committed misconduct by claiming certain tests had been completed when in fact they hadn't. Now, the FAA is investigating whether Boeing completed inspections to confirm adequate bonding and grounding where the wings joined the main body of the plane on certain 787 Dreamliner aircraft. Bonding and grounding is vital on a plane because it prevents static buildup. Think of it as electrical safeguards. Boeing credited a South Carolina worker who saw something they felt was wrong on the production line and came forward and reported it. Cutting corners at work is something that many of us may have been guilty of at various times in our lives. But given the frequency with which quality control issues keep coming up at Boeing, the airline has a long way to go to regain the trust of the flying public, its customers, the airlines, as well as lawmakers.
Boeing's shares dropped sharply on the news of the investigation. The company has told the FAA that it will re-inspect all 787 jets on the manufacturing line and develop an action plan to address concerns about planes already in service. In other news, in recent months, as Israel's war in Gaza has intensified, we've seen consumers boycotting brands with perceived links to Israel. Major fast food chains like McDonald's and KFC have reported a drop in sales as a direct result of the boycotts. And one of the main demands of protesters in the US is that their universities stop investing in companies linked to Israel, like Google, Microsoft, and defense contractor Lockheed Martin. Ian Lee, who teaches strategic management at Carleton University, told me more about the impact.
It's very important to distinguish between sanctions versus boycotts. Sanctions are imposed by countries, by nation states. Boycotts are imposed by individual groups, protest groups against particular companies. So this is very important. The second distinction is the boycott against the company because of something the company did inside its company. Think of Anheuser-Busch in the United States last year in its activities that enraged many consumers, and that boycott was effective. But secondary boycotts, that is to say, boycotting a company because they're involved with a country that people are opposed to, is less successful in the research literature. We have to make those very important distinctions, I think, in terms of analyzing the success or failures of these boycotts.
Yeah, another distinction perhaps to note is that these brands often operate a franchise model, so boycotts impact local franchisee holders more directly than the brands themselves.
Indeed. In fact, that's an additional point to make. We have to distinguish between the franchise versus the corporate head office. And secondly, is it impacting sales or is it impacting the brand? The research on this shows that the sales hit is not as significant generally, but the hit to the brand, the damage to the brand, is much more significant. And so this is not to suggest that boycotts don't work. It's just that they have an impact that people may not realize. It's not the sales decline, it's the impact to the brand, which we can see in, for example, the decline in the share price.
Yeah, and brands also sit up and take notice when these things happen to them as well. Most brands don't want to get dragged into politics, though, do they?
Exactly. The large corporations tend to be very, very averse to bad publicity. They're not political actors, and so the last thing they want is to be in the national news or the international news for bad reasons. And they avoid negative publicity like the plague. So their job is they try to minimize and avoid it completely.
The European Union has approved a $14.9 billion purchase of US steel by Japan's Nippon Steel. In a move viewed as a formality, the European Commission said it cleared the deal because the firms will have limited market positions after the transaction. The acquisition faces opposition in the United States, with President Joe Biden saying he believes the US steelmaker should remain domestically owned. In an interview with a leading Indian newspaper, India's foreign minister has defended blocking investments from China. He said India cannot compromise on national and economic security while trying to open up the economy. The BBC's Runade Mukherjee has more.
India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was speaking to the Economic Times when he said that it was about protecting domestic businesses, especially the small and medium enterprises. Also, batting away allegations of becoming a protectionist economy, the Foreign Minister also said it was about protecting the interests of the working class in the country. Just to put things in context, relations between India and China have been at their lowest ever since the 2020 violent altercation along the Indo-China frontier over a territorial dispute. Back then, in protest, India had banned hundreds of Chinese apps, including TikTok, from operating here. New Delhi has since been pushing domestic manufacturing and incentivizing businesses to move production from China to India to help offset the huge trade deficit with Beijing. Now, this is what it all boils down to. India imports way more from China than it actually exports. According to some studies, the trade deficit in the last 5 years has gone up to just a little less than $400 billion. So despite the tough talk, these are the realities that India is facing. It's an aspect that has worried both economists as well as strategic affairs experts.
Asia is home to some of the world's best-loved cuisines, which may explain why Western food has typically struggled to break into the market. But that's starting to change, thanks to higher incomes and better-travelled consumers. One country looking to take advantage of this is the UK. Recently, Asia's biggest food and beverage show came to Singapore, and as a treat, we sent our business reporter, Nick Marsh.
Hungry? Well, you're in the right place. I'm in one of Asia's food meccas. But on display is a who's who of European cuisine. And they're ready to battle it out, bite for bite.
As incomes start to rise, as tastes broaden and travel becomes more common, it's an opportunity for governments not only to sell their products, but also to promote an ideal image of their country.
Do you think of anything in particular when you think of food from Britain?
Sausage, I don't know.
Quite boring, actually. Not so special.
But these cheese exporters are here to fly the flag for British gastronomy.
It's a massive job educating people because, you know, the French and the Swiss and the Italians have been doing it a lot longer than we have. Parmesan's been around forever. So we've come in sort of fairly late, so we're having to get that message across.
And this is what they're up against.
Anyone want tiramisu?
For Italy, selling food to Asia isn't just vital for its economy, it's basically a form of diplomacy.
They're foodies, they love their food, they love their tradition. It's something we have in common, and that it's, makes easier to spread also the Italian culinary tradition around the world.
I'll have a try on that there, thank you.
After Brexit, UK exporters were promised new markets.
Almost dropped it there. That is very good. You did say it was good. This is grass-fed 100% British beef. And these are the people that British producers are betting on. They want them to know, firstly, that this meat exists, and they're hoping, secondly, that they'll like it, and eventually, above all, that they're going to buy it.
The reality is that exports to Asia only represent a fraction of what Britain sells to the European Union. The UK government told the BBC that it has hosted events at trade shows in the region to try and drive demand for British food. But the suppliers, well, they don't receive any grants to attend these events in the first place. Unlike other countries, they had to pay out of their own pocket just to be here.
which makes it very difficult to, stand out against the other European groups or other world groups that, are almost fully funded by government.
This is your VR cheese experience.
Absolutely. Would you like to try?
To keep up, British producers are having to get creative to spread the word, which I enjoyed firsthand.
I'm just cleaning the udder of a cow. Okay, I'm grating the cheese onto the noodles.
But building a reputation doesn't come overnight. Many are still finding their way. Nick Marsh, BBC News, Singapore.
Yeah, good stuff there from Nick. Okay, let's take you to some live pictures, let's take you to some pictures then from the Met Gala earlier that is underway in New York. Plenty of celebrities attending from this region, including BTS and Bollywood star Alia Bhatt. And the event raises money for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It is also a showcase for designers of high fashion. There's a lot of money involved. Tickets are rumoured to cost upwards of $70,000. And that is it for the final ever edition of Asia Business Report. Hard to believe it's been over 20 years since the programme launched here in Singapore. Starting from tomorrow, we'll have a new look and feel. But what won't change is our dedication to bring you all the biggest business stories from around the world that matter to you. See you tomorrow.
I'll make sure the mics are recording us. Margaret Atwood, welcome to this Cultural Life.
Some of the world's leading artistic figures revealed to me their influences.
You try and meet more or less everyone who wants to meet you.